The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello and welcome, everybody. So, it's just a few days until the annual Whitehall, New York Sasquatch Festival. It's this Saturday, September 28th, and I have to say, I'm so excited to be going again this year. So, if any of you are in the area and you're into Bigfoot, it's a great day in a cute little historic town, and there's lectures and photographs and footprint casts and great food, and this year there's 125 vendors. So come check it out and stop by our booth and say hello.
Yeah, every year it seems to be getting bigger and bigger.
Yes.
It's really catching on.
Yes.
And it's one of those events that you don't want to miss.
And it's family friendly.
That it is, and we met a lot of little kids last year that shared their paranormal and other stories with us.
They did. Yeah, it was great to hear all of the stories last year, so I'm hoping to hear a bunch more this year, too.
Yeah, it's definitely something you don't want to miss.
Right. Well, speaking of really excited, I have to tell you that my story tonight, I'm really excited about it because it's my favorite topic. It's about a mysterious person.
Other than me?
Yeah. I didn't say enigmatic. I said mysterious.
Well, all right. Carry on then. I don't need this kind of abuse.
Oh, well, you can just sit back and listen.
That's what I'm going to do.
Okay. The story of Kaspar Houser is so strange and so confounding that people have been trying to solve the question of who he really was since the day he stumbled into Nuremberg, Germany in 1828. Spoiler alert, they still don't know. On May 28th of 1828, a teenage boy wandered into the public square in what is now Nuremberg. He wore pantaloons, a silk necktie, a waistcoat, and a gray jacket. But his boots were so worn and busted that his feet were bloodied. At first, the 16-year-old boy didn't attract any attention. He was just another traveler. When he approached passing strangers, holding out a letter addressed to Captain von Wessingnig of the local cavalry regiment, they merely pointed him on his way. Eventually, the local shoemaker, named Weichmann, took notice of the boy, who seemed very lost and very confused. Weichmann read the letter, which was unsigned. The anonymous letter writer basically said that the boy was given to him as an infant on October 7th, 1812. The anonymous man taught the boy to read and write and gave him religious instruction, but he never allowed the boy to step inside his home. At this point, according to the letter, Captain von Wessingnig could either accept him into the cavalry, since the boy's father had been a cavalryman, or he could hang the boy for all he cared. Then the shoemaker discovered that the boy carried a second letter. This one was also unsigned, but it stated that the boy was born on April 30th of 1812 and that he wasn't allowed to leave his house because they didn't want anyone to know he was there. It said his name was simply Kaspar. This second letter, which many believed was written by the boy's mother, did say that his father was a cavalryman and that all the boy wanted was to be what his father had been. Since she could no longer care for him, she was sending him to the military. The shoemaker didn't know what to do, since the boy kept repeating the same two things over and over. I want to be a cavalryman, as my father was, and horse, horse. And that was it. No matter what Weichman asked him, the boy's response was always the same. I don't know. And what he didn't know was astounding. He claimed to not know where he was from or where he was now. He didn't know how to read or write. He didn't know his own name. So Weichman decided to take the boy to see Captain von Wessenig. But after reading the two letters and questioning the boy, who still didn't seem to know who he was or where he was, the captain refused to sign him on. Luckily, he wasn't the type of man to follow through with the first letter's other suggestion of hanging him. Instead, he brought the boy to the police. With the police questioning him, the boy suddenly remembered all kinds of things. First, he could say and write his name, Kaspar Houser. He demonstrated that he knew how to use money and that he'd memorized certain prayers. However, he still couldn't explain where he had come from, and since he had no known relatives to care for him, it was decided that the best place for him was the Lugensland Tower at Nuremberg Castle. He was imprisoned there for the next 2 months, and his behavior was studied by his jailer, André Hiltel. First, Kaspar had no trouble climbing the 90 steps to his tower room, but no matter what food they served him, he refused it. All he would eat was bread and water. According to allthat'sinteresting.com, Kaspar was enthralled by the sight of a lit candle. He stared at it as if it were magic, and he reached for the flame burning his hand. He was also equally intrigued by a mirror. He reacted as if he had never seen his own face before, and grabbed for the glass as if he thought another person was inside it staring back at him. During those 2 months, the mayor, Mayor Bindel, visited Kaspar often, probably because Kaspar began telling some horrible stories about what he now remembered of his life before arriving in town. First, he claimed that for as long as he could remember, he had lived in a dark cell that was 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, and only 3.5 feet tall. He slept on a bed of straw. He owned 3 wooden toys, 2 figures of a horse and 1 figure of a dog. Each day he was given bread and water by an unseen person, but the water tasted strange and made him fall into a deep sleep. When he woke up, the straw was always new and fresh, and someone had cleaned his hair and his fingernails. Right before he was released from this dark cell, a man had come to visit, but who the man was he couldn't say, since the man kept his face hidden. He was the one who taught Kaspar to write his name. It was this stranger who also taught him to say that his father was a cavalryman, but Kaspar swore he learned the phrase without having any idea what it actually meant. Then he claimed that he had had a dream in which he lived in an enormous castle with a well-dressed lady and a man who wore all black. The man carried a sword. A local professor theorized that this wasn't a dream at all, but a repressed memory. The president of the Court of Appeals, a man named Paul Johann Anselm Ritter von Feuerbach investigated the case, but he came up empty. Kaspar was still a complete mystery. The people of Nuremberg took great pity on Kaspar, and he was formally adopted by the town so that he would always have food, shelter, and an education. They also became incredibly invested in his story, and 3 theories quickly came into play. First, Kaspar was simply a wild boy, and the town was doing the noble and right thing by welcoming him in as one of their own. The second theory was that Kaspar was actually the son of royalty and needed to be protected. Obviously, he had been hidden away for a reason by powerful parents who wanted his identity hidden until the time was right. It was the duty of the people of Nuremberg to keep the prince safe. The schoolmaster, Friedrich Dahmer, who considered himself a budding philosopher, was fascinated by Kaspar, and he began conducting all kinds of experiments. He claimed that the experiments were meant to help figure out who Kaspar was and where he had come from, but the experiments themselves might seem a little strange. Like magnetism. Dahmer claimed that when he held a compass in front of Kaspar, the boy placed his hand over his stomach and said he could feel his energy being drawn away from him. It wasn't much of an experiment, but since Dahmer also taught Kaspar all kinds of things and discovered that Kaspar liked to draw and encouraged him to draw, it seems like a fair trade. But then, in October of 1829, Kaspar was attacked. He claimed that he was sitting in the privy of Dahmer's house when a hooded man broke in, threatened him by saying, "You still have to die before you leave the city of Nuremberg," and struck him on the forehead. Kaspar escaped to his first-floor bedroom and then down into the cellar, where he was found bloodied and scared. Police, fearing for his safety, removed him from Dahmer's house and brought him to the home of Johann Biberbach, a municipal authority. This incident just added more fuel to the theory that Kaspar was a prince and that someone wanted him dead. He stayed with the Biberbach family for 2 years, but then on April 3, 1830, Biberbach heard a gunshot from Kaspar's room. When he rushed in, he found Kaspar prone on the floor, bleeding from his temple. Initially, Kaspar claimed that he had been attacked once again. But after being pressed for information, the young man claimed that he had climbed up on a chair to reach some books on a shelf, lost his balance, and reached out to grab hold of anything to break his fall. As he'd fallen, he'd grasped what he thought was another shelf, but what turned out to be the pistol that was hanging on the wall. And somehow, no one is really sure how, he'd accidentally pulled the trigger and the bullet had grazed his temple. Biberbach, by the way, was now fully convinced of theory number 3, which I haven't mentioned yet, that Kaspar was no wild boy or marked prince. He was simply a con artist. This theory was also shared by Dahmer at this point, since both men claimed Kaspar was a pathological liar. Biberbach felt strongly that Kaspar had cut himself with a razor on purpose. For what reason, no one could say, other than the young man and Biberbach had argued just before the incident. It was also the same with Dahmer. He and Kaspar had quarreled right before Kaspar went to the privy and was allegedly attacked by the hooded man. Both Dahmer and Biberbach were glad to be rid of him. Mrs. Biberbach even said that Kaspar was, quote, full of vanity, of spite, end quote. Next, Kaspar was shuffled off to the home of Baron von Tuscher, who offered to take in the boy, who was now actually 18 or 19 years old. Kaspar only stayed a year before moving again, also due to his alleged lies and deceitful nature while living with the Baron. But then came the British nobleman Lord Philip Henry Stanhope, the 4th Earl of Stanhope. Lord Stanhope was a bit of an eccentric character, and he'd heard of Kaspar during his travels through Germany. Kaspar did not disappoint, and Lord Stanhope was intrigued that Kaspar now suddenly knew a few Hungarian words and claimed that a Hungarian countess was his real mother. Lord Stanhope quickly became a firm believer in theory number 2, that Kaspar was royalty. He took the boy on as his foster child and poured a ton of money into trying to figure out if Kaspar really was a prince. To him, it made sense. The boy was hidden away for most of his life, and he'd arrived in Nuremberg fairly well dressed. So, he brought Kaspar to Hungary twice, hoping to jog his memory. But Kaspar didn't recognize a single building or landmark. One of the Hungarian noblemen who met with Kaspar told Lord Stanhope that the very idea of Kaspar being royalty was laughable. By December of that year, 1831, Lord Stanhope had given up trying to figure out who Kaspar really was. He continued to pay for the young man's room and board and education, but Stanhope left Germany without taking Kaspar with him. He later published a book, according to LiveScience.net, in which he wrote that it was his duty to openly confess that he had been deceived. But Kaspar pretty much had it made. He had 2 wealthy patrons, Paul Feuerbach from years before — he was the guy who was high up in the Court of Appeals, and Lord Stanhope still. But even Feuerbach had had enough by the end of his life in 1883. Prior to his death, he had written a note that said, quote, "Kaspar Houser is a smart, scheming codger, a rogue, a good-for-nothing that ought to be killed," end quote. By 1882, Kaspar was working as a copyist in an Ansbach law office and living with a schoolmaster named Meyer, who had begrudgingly agreed to take Kaspar in. The two argued frequently, but Kaspar was looking forward to a visit from Lord Stanhope, who had promised to come to Ansbach for Christmas. On December 14th, after a rather heated argument with Meyer, Kaspar arrived at the schoolmaster's house, clutching his side, which was stained with blood, and babbling incoherently. According to allthat'sinteresting.com, Kaspar swore that he had allowed himself to be lured into the park by a man who claimed to have information for him. This stranger had led Kaspar to a secluded area in the Ansbach court garden, acted as if he was handing him a small parcel, but then drove a knife into his stomach or chest, depending on the source. When the police investigated, Kaspar insisted he could show them where this attack had taken place. He was recovering well enough from his wound and could lead them to the exact spot. But before he led them even halfway there, he collapsed on the ground. He died on December 17th. Now, the police did make it to the spot in the park and were pretty amazed to discover a small purple bag that contained a note. The note was strange and could only be deciphered when held up to a mirror. It was written in reversed letters, also known as mirror writing. But important information was either scratched out or missing altogether. The note was written in German and said, quote, Houser will be able to tell you quite precisely how I look and from where I am. To save Houser the effort, I want to tell you myself where I come blank. It was blank. It didn't say. I come from blank, the Bavarian border, blank, on the river, blank. I will even tell you the name, M-L-O, end quote. But something else they found was even more mysterious than this note. Just one set of footprints in the snow. Kaspar's. Over the years, countless historians and experts, as well as authors and amateur sleuths, have tried to piece together just who Kaspar Houser really was. With more modern technology, there are some things that have been pretty much figured out. First, those 2 original letters that Kaspar brought to Nuremberg were written by the same person. Handwriting analysis has pretty much proven that without a doubt. And Captain Wessenig wasn't a captain yet in the years the letters were supposedly written. So, who wrote them and when? Perhaps Kaspar himself did. Second, when seen all together, Kaspar's tales of his life truly contradict themselves. As he grew older and added more details that he allegedly remembered, his stories became even more convoluted and downright contradictory. For example, LiveScience.net points out that several experts believe that if Kaspar truly was kept hidden in a tiny, cramped cell for 16 years, he should have been far more sickly and physically debilitated than he was. Rickets was a huge problem during that time period, and someone living in that situation for that long would undoubtedly suffer from lack of vitamin C. But all accounts say that Kaspar was physically quite healthy. As for the attacks on his life, experts point out that they all coincidentally happened immediately after an argument with whoever Kaspar was living with. And the wounds, other than the one that ended his life, never matched up with the weapon he claimed was used against him. Still, there were those who believed that perhaps Kaspar really was a prince, and they named the Grand Duke Karl von Baden and his wife Stephanie de Beauharnois as his possible parents. This theory revolved around the idea that the couple's only son was switched without their knowing. They were told their child had died, but really the baby, Kaspar, was taken away. With Kaspar gone, von Baden had no male heirs, and his male relatives were vying to be next on the throne. However, in 1996, 2002, and 2024, DNA samples were taken from Kaspar's hair and clothing, and then compared to descendants of the von Baden line. None of the samples were a match. So, who was Kaspar Houser? Well, I did tell you right at the very beginning that no one has figured it out yet. But he's certainly been remembered.
It's pretty amazing.
I love stories like that, and you know they drive me nuts because I want to know the answers.
Well, like we've said before, perhaps someday we'll find out.
Maybe. Who knows?
You never know, especially as our technology continues to grow.
Yes, that's the only saving grace, I think, is that as technology gets better, we might get closer to answers. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, we're talking 1831.
Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago when you think back about it.
Yeah. So there's hope.
Yeah. I think that he was just a disturbed person.
And he did get free room and board and an education.
He was very smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
He played everyone.
I think he may have, yes. Well, we'll be back after this quick break. Hey, did you know the human body is weird? And here are 8 random facts to prove it.
60% of the human brain is made of fat.
Humans are bioluminescent. Our eyes just can't see it.
When listening to music, our heartbeat syncs with the rhythm.
When awake, your brain produces enough electricity to light up a light bulb.
50% of our hand strength comes from your pinky finger.
The average brain has 48.6 thoughts per minute. That's 70,000 a day.
When you blush, your stomach does too.
The pink corner in your eye is an evolutionary leftover from an inner eyelid. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back.
And I'm wondering where your mind wandered during your 70,000 thoughts per day.
Well, for my story tonight, we're going to take a little trip to New Jersey.
Nice.
Every town across the U.S. has that one road. The one road that people all agree is super creepy at night. Maybe it's the way the trees line either side, casting shadows across the pavement. Or maybe it's the one road that seems to have way more accidents than any other road. Maybe it's the one that people say ends right in front of a notoriously haunted house or cemetery. But when it comes to creepy roads, there aren't many that can rival the 2-lane, 6.7-mile-long rural road in Warren County, New Jersey. Known as Shades of Death Road, it winds its way through Liberty and Independence townships until it runs alongside Jenny Jump State Forest. And for years, people have had some pretty unnerving stories to tell about it. First, there's the name, Shades of Death Road. The name almost immediately conjures up all kinds of intrusive thoughts. It's hard to imagine who in their right mind would choose such a name for a road. And in case you're wondering if it's just a nickname, you'd be quite mistaken. According to Medium.com, that's the actual name of the road. Although how or why it was named that has become just as much of a mystery as the many ghost sightings, murders, car accidents, and packs of wild cats that are said to roam along its path. So tonight, we're going to delve into some of the many theories as to why the road is named what it is. Now, some of the more popular theories are intriguing. When the area was first settled by white men, groups of bandits would wait along its edges for unsuspecting travelers. The bandits would ambush the wagons and carriages, often killing the occupants in the process. People often added to the legend by saying that the locals used the road as a place to hang these bandits, leaving their bodies in the trees as a warning to other criminals. Another theory is that the road got its name due to the marshy, swampy area that stretches all along the road, which led to malaria outbreaks. And since there were actually recorded malaria outbreaks in this area in the 1850s, this might be the more likely explanation. When the state drained the swamps in 1884, the malaria problem disappeared, but perhaps the name of the road stuck around. Yet another murder theory says that the road was originally known as the Shades, because of the low-hanging trees which formed a canopy over the length of the street. Legend says that over time, many murders occurred there, and many of them stayed unsolved, causing the local residents to add the sinister of death twist to the formerly pleasant Shades name, according to WeirdNewJersey.com. But then there's another murder theory. There were 4 grisly murders in the 1920s and 30s related to the road. In one case, a man was being robbed and was hit over the head with a tire iron. In another, a woman beheaded her husband and buried his head and body on opposite sides of the road. The third was the unsolved murder of Bill Cummings, who was shot and buried in a mud pile. And finally, there's the murder of the old tinker. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the word tinker, a tinker was someone who went door to door selling old pots and pans. Anyway, the legend goes that one day both the tinker and his horse were found murdered on the road. Now, those deaths are enough to earn a name like Shades of Death Road. Except there's no actual record of any of those 4 murders actually happening. Now, I dug and dug, and I couldn't find a thing. And several of the sites that I used to put this story together openly say that the 4 murder theory is completely unsubstantiated. So, did any of it actually happen? Were the records of these events lost? Or perhaps they were never recorded for reasons unknown? Now, it seems that there is always a little truth in legend, no matter how small a morsel of truth. And stories do seem to get twisted and exaggerated from person to person over time. But the truth is that we simply don't know. Another theory has to do with the many curves along the road. Remember, it's not quite 7 miles long, but it is dark and treacherous. Some people insist that the road was named Shades of Death because of the large number of car accidents that happened there. And unfortunately, it does seem to be the site of frequent car accidents, so it sounds plausible. Except the road had that name long before automobiles were even invented. One legend that I found to be interesting is that many years ago, a car of teenagers was driving down a country road in Hackettstown, New Jersey, after the prom. The road was slippery that night and curved sharply to the left and right, winding into the dark. The driver lost control and the car crashed into a ditch, killing one of the passengers. To this day, on dark and slippery nights, you can still see the girl who died wandering that murderous curve wearing her prom dress. The last and final theory is that the road was once home to a pack of wildcats that attacked weary travelers. The area that is now Bear Swamp has always been home to a range of wildlife, including bobcats. There is a popular legend that back in the 1800s, a hunter came face to face with a mountain lion. He aimed his gun at it and it misfired. So the brave hunter had no choice but to fight the wildcat barehanded. The man won. One man fighting one mountain lion is far different from packs of wildcats attacking weary travelers. But it's possible that this one legend morphed into the other. In either case, both stories are just tall tales, especially since bobcats and mountain lions aren't the same thing. So, despite a long list of theories of how Shades of Death Road got its name, there isn't any real answer, which, like I said before, just adds to the mystery surrounding the road. And it doesn't help that several spots along the road or just off the road are steeped in ghost stories. People driving down the road and walking down the road have encountered countless spirits of all ages and backgrounds. They've seen apparitions and strange myths. They've heard disembodied voices, or they simply experience something that they just can't explain and have no choice but to call it paranormal. So with that said, let's delve into some of the supernatural and paranormal stories that are said to take place on Shades of Death Road and the surrounding area. So, let's start off with Ghost Lake. According to Medium.com, the Lenape people always considered the water there to be cursed. Perhaps that's because the lake was man-made by 2 white settlers who dammed the creek in the 1800s. But in more recent times, people have claimed to see all kinds of unexplained things, like strange lights that appear to dance across the surface of the water. These lights sometimes manifest into the apparitions of the Lenape people. Then there are the claims from the people who park near the lake to enjoy the beautiful view. They happen to be the only car there, but when they happen to glance down, they notice footprints all around their car. Or suddenly, they notice pillars of mist rising up from the surface of the lake that morph into the outlines of human bodies. Some claim that no matter what time they visit the lake, it never gets fully dark there. It's as though the lake is caught in some continuous twilight. It seems that all great ghost stories feature a spooky cabin in the woods, and the Shades is no exception. Near Ghost Lake lies an old, run-down cabin that is barely visible, especially at night. Over time, the story of this cabin has been retold and changed, but the main idea remains the same. A group of teenagers dared each other to enter the cabin and discovered that it was in a state of disrepair. The interior was filled with decaying wood furniture, and the structure itself was falling apart due to neglect. Strangely, there was a piano built into one wall that would suddenly play by itself in short, angry bursts without warning. The teenagers left the cabin feeling terrified after hearing the sound of someone walking on broken glass that seemed to be getting closer no matter which way they turned. Also nearby Ghost Lake, there is a small cave that was once used by the Lenape people. Nicknamed the Fairy Hole, it is an area that was explored and documented by archaeologists in 1918. Inside the cave, they found pottery shards, arrowheads, and other flint tools that were identified as Lenape Indian artifacts. It is believed that the cave held significance for the natives and is located near a Lenape burial ground. Visitors have also reported hearing whispers in the Lenape language when inside the cave. Then there's Lenape Lane, which is a short unpaved road that runs eastward off the Shades just north of I-80. It's about 3/4 of a mile long and ends at a farmhouse, serving as a little more than a driveway. Halfway down the road, there's a space to park or turn around next to a wooden structure that looks like an abandoned stable. According to Weird New Jersey, visitors to the stable site at night have reported experiencing local fog surrounding it and seeing apparitions even in clear weather. They have also claimed that the air can feel unusually chilly, and there's a general sense of unease in the area for no apparent reason. Legend has it that sometimes a white orb or light appears near the end of the road and chases vehicles back out to Shades of Death Road. If the light turns red during this process, it is believed that all those who see it will die. This may be related to an old tree near the end of Lenape that was never cut down when the road was built. The road forks right before the tree, and a big red reflector has been nailed to the tree to warn drivers. Another legend suggests that if someone circles around the tree and drives down the road again at midnight, a red light will shine and the driver will not survive. Lenape Lane is considered a dead-end road that's probably used as a lover's lane for the very brave. It is rumored that if you drive your car to the end of the road, a mysterious fog will roll in and surround your vehicle. While in the fog, apparitions may appear, and strange handprints may materialize on the surface of your car. Long before the highway was built, the Jenny Jump State Forest was just a nameless woodland. Native Americans living in the area believed that the forest was cursed, haunted by restless and dangerous spirits. The Iroquois and the Lenni Lenape tribes who lived there were in constant conflict, turning the forest into a battleground where many warriors were killed. Settlers who tried to move in were also attacked and killed by one of the tribes. One story that was often told was about a young girl named Jenny who lived in the forest with her father. When they were attacked, her father told her to run and jump off a cliff to avoid being killed by the attackers. Jenny did what her father told her to do, and she died from the fall. This tragic tale is believed to be the origin of the name Jenny Jump State Forest. Now, no discussion of Shades of Death Road would be complete without mentioning the infamous Devil's Tree. Located just off the road, this gnarled dead oak tree has a sinister reputation. According to local lore, The tree was used for lynchings and other dark rituals, and some believe it's a portal to the netherworld. Visitors have reported feelings of dread and unease when approaching the tree, and attempts to cut it down have been met with strange and often tragic accidents. In addition, there are legends about a Native American spirit guide who takes the form of a deer and appears on the road at night. If drivers see him and don't slow down enough to avoid a collision, they will end up in a serious car accident with a real deer. Another legend is about a haunted bridge, where if drivers stop after midnight with their high beams on and honk their horns 3 times, they will see the ghost of 2 young children who were hit by a car while playing on the road. This legend is based on a bridge over the Flatbrook and Old Mine Road, not far from the Shades of Death Road. The bridge is no longer accessible by car, as a newer, larger bridge has been built next to it, but it can still be reached on foot. There are also stories about a man who behaves like a beast and scares people at night. He drives a black truck and has been known to threaten people to stay off his road. There is also a place called Haunted Hollow Pass, where travelers have reported seeing ghostly figures walking along the road and disappearing when approached. One famous ghost story involves a hitchhiker who appears on the road and then disappears mysteriously. Another legend talks about a ghostly figure carrying a lantern who wanders the road at night, guiding lost souls. Some people claim to have seen a young girl who seems lost and is searching for her parents while walking along the road at night. She will ask where her parents are, and legend says that if you run and panic, you will die in 40 days. If you give her any other answer, she will go away. Rumor also has it that she was kidnapped and murdered there. Additionally, there have been many car accidents on this road due to its winding nature and the history of the area, causing people to speed through it. And then there's the Tinker. Remember him? He was one of the 4 grisly murders that allegedly took place in the 1920s or 30s. People claim that you can still hear the sound of banging metal pans in the night wind when you are deep in the forest. In the 1990s, strange Polaroid pictures were found scattered in the area. The photos showed dead women next to metal objects and images from a television screen. Authorities initially thought that they were the work of a serial killer, but the investigation did not lead to any new information. The women in the pictures could not be identified, and it was unclear how the photos ever ended up there. But for some strange reason, those pictures disappeared before the investigation could be completed. For a stretch of barely 7 miles long, Shades of Death has more lore and legend packed into it than possibly any other road in America. And perhaps it's warranted. Maybe it's one of those places where the paranormal just seems to converge into one spot. So, it all leads me to wonder how many unsuspecting tourists have stumbled upon this road on an evening's drive only to find themselves on Shades of Death Road. I can picture the looks on their faces as they roll up the windows, lock the doors, and put the pedal to the metal, wondering what awaits them as they desperately try to make it to the end of the road. And perhaps they make it to live another day, or perhaps unwillingly and unknowingly, they too become part of the legend themselves.
That's a lot of stuff happening in just a 7-mile stretch of road. That's like a different apparition every 10 feet.
Yeah, it certainly does seem to have a lot of lore surrounding it, and it would definitely be a fun place to go to on a road trip.
Well, maybe someday we will. I'll just add it on to one of the haunted road trip routes that I've already planned out.
That sounds like a plan.
I know.
And I can imagine it gets a lot of traffic just due to the curious onlookers, that know about the tales and kids that are daring their friends to go there at night. It definitely caught my attention. And I also got to mention that it was said that people have tried to take the sign, so locals greased up the sign to prevent people from stealing it.
Well, good for them, because that's pretty crappy to steal their street sign.
Yeah, and here's the cool thing. I was looking up the sign itself, and I came across eBay. And there are signs that you can buy for like $10. They say Shades of Death Road.
Oh, that's cool.
I know, it's really cool.
Well, we may have to purchase one.
Well, I've got one in my cart already.
Of course you do. That's what you were doing in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Well, everybody, if you would like to know more about Kaspar Houser or the Shades of Death Road, you can always check our sources in our show notes.
That you can?
They can.
Yeah. And I think when I get the Shades of Death sign, I'll put it up on Facebook for everyone to see.
Sounds like a plan.
It certainly does.
With a disclaimer, we did not go to New Jersey and take this sign, because that's not cool.
Right.
Yes.
Plus, we live pretty far away.
Well, we do.
That's a hell of a trip just to get a sign.
Yeah. We wouldn't do that.
No. We wouldn't.
No. We would not.
Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you all again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon.